Welcome back to part 2 of what's in the box for Dark Ages Dominion. So we already went over the 2 costing cards, and we already went over the shelters, and we also went over the ruins. So now let's get started with the 3 costing cards. Now there are 6 3 costing cards in this expansion, so let's get started. So first we have Market Square. Then we have the Hermit, and the Hermit is pretty interesting because it works with another card called Madman, which isn't in the supply. And then you have another one here called Storeroom. But let's start with the Market Square. This is a pretty cool card. Now, it gives you a card, it gives you an action, and it gives you a plus buy, and that's pretty basic, and that's pretty cool, too, for a 3 costing card. But then here's the reaction part of the card. This is what really makes this card awesome. When one of your cards is trashed, you may discard this from your hand to gain a gold. Now, think about it. It's not just attack cards that could possibly trash your cards. It's any card. If you trash a card, and this is in your hand, and you trash one of your cards, and this is in your hand, you can discard this to gain a gold. That is awesome. This is a very powerful card, and it's very useful. I love this card a lot. A lot indeed. Okay, then we have the Hermit. So let's go over it. Look through your discard pile. You may trash a non-treasure card from your discard pile or hand, and then gain a card costing up to 3. So this is really cool because if you have a discard pile, that is. If you don't have a discard pile, then it would have to be something in your hand if you wanted to trash a card. Now remember, this card does not trash treasure cards, so you can't use it to trash your coppers. So you'd have to still have another card to trash cards. But still, that's pretty cool. You trash a card from your discard pile, like if you were playing with other expansions and you had curses or wastelands in the game. Well, that would be very useful to that. If you had estates, if you were playing with estates instead of shelters for some reason or another, because you don't necessarily have to use the shelters, it's more of an option. But if you're only playing with this expansion, they do recommend that you just play with the shelters. But you could use it to trash the shelters. You could use it to trash the estates, for instance, and any other cards you wanted to, really. And then you would gain a card costing up to 3 as well. So that's pretty cool. I like that a lot. Now here's where it gets interesting. When you discard this from play, if you didn't buy any cards this turn, trash this and gain a Madman from the Madman pile. So this is why you'd want to gain a card costing up to 3 with this card. Because if you decided not to buy anything this turn, you could trash the Hermit and gain a Madman from the Madman pile. And here's the Madman. It's going to give you +2 actions. Then return this to the Madman pile. If you do, +1 card per card in your hand. This could be very, very powerful. You get a turn that gives you tons of cards and you still have some actions and you play this, you get basically double the cards you have in your hand. Now, if that's 4 cards in your hand, that means you're going to get to draw 4 cards, obviously. That's pretty powerful on its own. And of course, if you're playing with cards that give you plus buys, etc., and you have tons of good treasure cards and action cards, you can have 1 powerful turn with this Madman. Sometimes I'll even hang on to it. I'll hold on to this card until I get a couple of Madmans, so that way I can maybe try to do a 2 Madman combo in a single turn for an even powerful turn, especially if we have more than 1 buy. Action cards that give you plus buys. I would especially do it for that reason too. This is not in the supply, so remember that. And then you'll have to return this to the Madman pile after you have used it. So it is a one-time use. So that is the thing. It's going to be a one-time use card. But still, it's a powerful card. Especially Hermit itself is a pretty powerful card. And I love both of these cards a lot. Then we have the Storeroom. This one gives you a plus buy, and then discard any number of cards, and then draw that many, then discard any number of cards for 1 treasure each. So first, you're going to discard any number of cards. So let's say you just decided to discard maybe 2 cards. You had 2 shelters in your hand. You weren't going to use them, so you decide to discard them, right? Then you'll draw that many. So then you draw 2 more cards. Then you can discard any number of cards for +1 treasure each. So let's say you did that, and you draw 2 cards, and they happen to be victory cards, like provinces or something. Well, you could discard those provinces, and then you'd get 1 treasure each, basically. So that could be useful. Of course, if you're drawing a bunch of cards, and they're action cards, and you don't have any actions left after you play this, then you can at least discard all those useless actions now because you can't use them, and you get a treasure. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. That could be useful at times for sure. So then we have 3 more costing cards that are 3. I'd like to go over all of the 3s in this video at least. So let's get started. So here we have the Forager. It gives you an action, and it gives you a buy. Then you trash a card from your hand, and then +1 treasure per differently named treasure in the trash. So this is very useful, just to trash at least 1 copper, 1 silver, 1 gold, or even maybe just any other treasure card that might be in the game, like spoils or counterfeit. Those are treasure cards that are in this expansion, and you could trash both of those and make this card extremely useful, because you'd get an action, you'd get a bunch of treasure, and you'd get a buy. If you had a bunch of Foragers, you could have 1 powerful turn. So, but remember, if you're going to do that, you should definitely, because you always have to trash a card from your hand. So you're still going to have to buy more cards. You should use that additional buy to get a copper if you can't use it for something even better than that, because you're going to want to keep, otherwise you're going to run out of cards pretty fast, for sure. But that's still a pretty cool card. Then we have the Urchin, and it gives you a card, and it gives you an action. And remember, this is an attack card, so that's kind of cool. It's an action card, it's an attack card that gives you +1 card and +1 action. So you could keep playing Urchins if you wanted to. But remember, it's an attack card, so most likely not so much, because each other player will discard down to 4 cards in hand. So yeah, you could play more than 1 Urchin in a turn, and yeah, you could do that, but the second time, obviously, it wouldn't attack your opponents. But there is a reason why you'd want to play 2 Urchins in a turn, and that's because of this effect. When you play another attack card while this is in play, you may first trash this to gain a mercenary from the mercenary pile. So, assuming you had other attack cards, then you could do them. But if this was the only attack card you had, then you definitely want to have a couple of merchants and play both of them in the same turn, because then you could trash one of the Urchins to gain a mercenary from, well, not in the supply, obviously. And unlike Madman, mercenary is not a one-time use, and it's a lot more powerful than Urchin, but only if you're going to trash cards from your hand. So this isn't going to be very useful to you if you don't have a lot of cards that give you +2 actions, and it's not going to be super useful to you if you also don't have a lot of cards you want to trash. But you may trash 2 cards from your hand, so you don't have to trash 2 cards from your hand. But if you don't trash 2 cards from your hand, this is kind of useless, because if you did trash 2 cards from your hand, you'd get +2 cards, +2 treasure, and each other player will discard down to 3 cards in hand. So basically, it's a militia, but it's going to give you 2 treasure and 2 cards. So that's 10 times better than a militia, because militia only gave you 2 money and then did that effect. This one's going to give you 2 cards. It's going to give you 2 money. And maybe if you have a bunch of cards you don't want anyway, like ruins or wastelands or shelters or even maybe estates or coppers, this is still a double whammy, a triple whammy card, and it could still be very useful to you. And there have been times when I've really liked playing with the mercenary, and there have been times when I didn't like it at all. It just works with some games. It doesn't work with everything. So, but there are times when this has been awesome to have. All right, and then we have the Sage. Now, the Sage gives you an action, and then reveal cards from the top of your deck until you reveal one costing 3 or more. Put that card into your hand, and then discard the rest. So this one guarantees, assuming you have something costing more than 3 in your deck. If you don't, this is the only card you have, then obviously you're not going to have anything for the Sage. But this guarantees that you're going to get something, you know, maybe a silver or an action card costing 3 or more. So that's kind of cool. It ensures that you're going to get one of those instead of a copper or an estate, obviously, or ruins. So this guarantees you get something probably good. But of course, if you play this in late in the game, this could also guarantee that you get a province, which obviously wouldn't be as useful. So, you know, this is definitely an early game strategy if you have something that costs more than 3 to mid game. But I wouldn't say it's end game useful. But it's still a really fun card to play with, and I like it a lot. Okay, so that's it for the 3 costing cards. In the next video, we'll get to the 4 costing cards, and we'll see if we can get through all of them. Probably not, though, because there is a lot.